Thank you, Peter.
Well, joining me now is the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg. There is a fair bit to discuss. Good morning to you, Treasurer. I know you're very busy at the moment. First of all, I just want to get your thoughts on these changes to foreign ownership. When do these changes kick in?
Immediately. The announcement today will see, as a precautionary measure, all foreign investment proposals scrutinised, subject to my approval. We're effectively removing the threshold that currently exists for many countries whose companies can make investments in Australia without the scrutiny of the Foreign Investment Review Board for purchases above effectively $1.2 billion. Well, today we are removing that threshold completely. And Pete, what Australians are learning through this crisis is that the government has their back. Whether it's our measures to strengthen the health system, which the Prime Minister and the Health Minister announced yesterday for mental health and for telehealth and other areas, whether it's the backing of small business and keeping employers employing Australians with our $189 billion of measures already announced, or whether it's our enhancement of the welfare safety net or today's announcement about foreign investment restrictions, we are watching their back, and we will ensure that they will get to the other side of this.
There are two Chinese-owned companies in Australia that secured medical supplies and shipped them back to China, as you'd be aware of. Treasurer, are you concerned that China might be trying to exploit this crisis?
Well, these measures are not directed at one particular country. They're all about supporting the national interest. That's what foreign investment must be in, the national interest. And as the head of the Foreign Investment Review Board has said previously, factors that we take into account when determining the national interest are, of course, national security, the character of the investor, competition issues, tax issues. And indeed, China was the 5th largest investor last year in Australia with investments of around $13 billion. The United States was our #1 investor with investments of around $58 billion. So we'll continue to scrutinise all foreign investment proposals reflecting the extraordinary times that we're in, and that is obviously to safeguard the national interest.
How many Australian businesses might be vulnerable?
Well, lots of Australian businesses are doing it tough, not just here, obviously in Australia, but businesses globally are seeing their share prices diminish quite substantially, and obviously having challenging times with their banks and securing the necessary debt and finance to get through this crisis. And those thresholds that have previously been in place are not necessarily appropriate for right now, because these are extraordinary times that we're living in.
Okay, Treasurer, a third wave of economic reforms are upon us. One of them is the wage subsidy program, to be called a job seeker allowance. Can you confirm that it will be $1,500 a fortnight that will be paid to workers?
Well, Pete, you'll have to tune in later today because there will be a very significant announcement about what we will do to support employers and employees, and this is all about ensuring that people can continue to remain in jobs. At the end of the day, we want Australian businesses and their employees to get to the other side intact, and that's why we're looking at this wage subsidy measure, because it's all about ensuring there's a connection between the employer and the employee through what is a very difficult time.
How can you be sure that businesses will pass that on to the employer? Because as I've read, it's the businesses that will be taking the money, and it'll be their duty to pass it on to the employer. Is that correct?
Well, there are legal obligations for that to occur, and of course our focus here is supporting the employee who has done it very, very tough, and obviously needs that security, needs that surety that they will continue to get that income support. But let's also be very clear, Pete. To date, the government, in its first 2 tranches of economic measures, announced unbelievably significant measures, unprecedented in scale and scope, enhancing the safety net, providing with this job seeker coronavirus supplement, which is going to be available to so many Australians. Our support of up to $100,000 for small businesses so that they could keep people employed and meet some of their fixed costs, as well as the loans that we are helping to co-guarantee with the banks to small businesses. All very substantial measures designed to keep people in employment and businesses in business.
Is rental assistance still on the table?
Well, we already provide Commonwealth rental assistance, and obviously that's of significant help to many people. As the Prime Minister said last night, when it comes to commercial and retail tenants, there's a lot of work still to be done between the states and the Commonwealth. But last night's announcement out of National Cabinet was also very significant, because what it meant is that for those Australian businesses and for those Australian households who are severely impacted by the coronavirus, they cannot be evicted for not paying the rent over the next 6 months. That's not to say they can't work out with their landlord an arrangement that will suit both parties. This is a time for burden sharing as Australians go through a very difficult time.
Well, just on that, what happens in the instance that the landlord is a mum and dad investor? Let's say it's a unit or an apartment, and that's their source of income that's going to steer them through retirement. Is there an option for them here to still be able to move someone on, a tenant on?
Well, the first thing to say is if a tenant is not affected severely by the coronavirus, then they should meet their obligations under the lease. The second is, and you've seen this in particularly the retail sector, so many businesses have to close, so therefore there are no customers coming through the door, no revenue, and therefore an inability to pay the rent. Well, in that case, the landlord and the tenant need to work through the situation to get them to the other side. You see, again, there's an alignment of interest here between landlord and tenant. The landlord wants to have a tenant after the coronavirus has gone through, and that means ensuring that they support that tenant through this period. Likewise, the tenant wants to maintain a relationship with their landlord and obviously to maintain their occupancy.
And of course the bank has a role to play here. What do you make of the ABA's decision to defer loans for 6 months today?
Well, we welcome the announcement today by the banks and across the country. I mean, we've been working very closely, Pete, with the banks on these measures, and today their announcement that SME lenders, landlords who may have loans of up to $10 million to have no interest or principal payments for 6 months is very significant as well. That is all part of the hibernation strategy, whether it's with the banks and interest payments, whether it's with the energy companies and energy bills, whether it's with insurance companies, their insurance premiums, or whether it's in relation to wage support. What we are trying to do here is to ensure that businesses and households get to the other side and that this economic blow is cushioned for them as much as possible.
Well, Treasurer, just finally, back on the job seeker allowance. So it is $1,500 a fortnight. I just want to confirm that.
Again, I'm not going to provide that level of detail on your show this morning. What we do have is already a JobKeeper coronavirus, a job seeker coronavirus supplement on top of the job seeker payment. That was effectively a doubling of the old New Start, an enhancement of the safety net. But there will be a further announcement today, which will involve significant additional income support to Australian employees.
The UK is going up to 80%, though. Was that ever a consideration?
Again, we'll have an Australian-style system, not a UK-style system.
Treasurer Josh Frydenberg, appreciate your time.
Good to be with you.